Hello, everyone. Today we have an unusual broadcast on Angel's Smart News. This time it won't be about technology, but about our personality. Our personality in the age of artificial intelligence and how algorithms influence our lives. I'll say right away, I won't be alone. I'll be joined by an interesting person who is very knowledgeable in psychology. She'll introduce herself in just a moment. Well, let's begin. Hello, Katya.
Hello, Sveta. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, dear viewers. My name is Katerina Bikir. I am a psychologist certified in the USA. I am a school consultant for children and adults. I am also a life coach and career coach. I work with entrepreneurs who are changing the world, people who want to change their own lives and the lives of those around them for the better.
It's so unusual. I wasn't a psychologist yet. All right, Katya, could you please tell us what happens to our psyche when we're constantly scrolling and why do we lose our sense of reality?
So right now we are really surrounded by technology. We have a lot of technology, social networks, and there are both pros and cons to this. Many people, especially during COVID, were very isolated and couldn't go outside, and social networks to some extent saved them. We were able to connect. That's the purpose of social networks. They were created to somehow bring people together. But when we constantly follow other people's lives scrolling, it's a kind of psychological defense from real life. If something doesn't suit us, it's much easier and faster to escape into, say, Instagram, Facebook, or other social networks and just look at other people's lives to distract ourselves. This helps a person avoid facing their inner experiences, to avoid unpleasant feelings. But that's exactly what draws us in, because we start comparing ourselves. We start judging ourselves unfavorably. Like Tanya has a new car, a great husband, smart kids, and I have nothing. And then the very problem that the person was trying to run away from becomes even more acute, because against the backdrop of these perfect pictures, a person notices and gets triggered by their own internal triggers even more. Those imperfections, those little hooks become even more obvious. That's why with social media, scrolling, and what scientists now call clip thinking, we are very susceptible, especially teenagers and children. When they start using technology, phones, tablets, at an early age, they end up only being able to absorb information in this way. They don't know how to process it any other way. They grab a little bit here, a little bit there, and then move on to the next thing. In other words, it's constant consumption of information, an overload of information. And the brain simply has neither the time nor the resources left for processing and reflection. We actually develop when we reflect on something, but instead we just get ready-made content. The content is small, short, fast, simple, spoon-fed, and there's no room left for creativity or reflection. Did I answer your question?
Yes. As I sit here, I realize how much I work on social media. I constantly have to process a lot of information, and I get it, but I work with the goal of earning money to create a new product. But people are just losing days of their lives to all this. I also work online.
I have online clients all over the world, and that's actually how I started working back in 2017 when not many specialists were working online. But I think that technology is both a plus and a minus. It allows us to work all over the world without any barriers. But what happens even in my own family is that my children, when they see me with my phone where I'm messaging with clients or with my computer, they think mom is playing, she's doing something, but it's not clear what. And when they go to their own gadgets, they start scrolling through. Snapchat kids are on there, no more on YouTube, just watching random videos, picking up chants, songs, and expressions. And they really get hooked on these videos, scrolling through them and consuming them in excessive amounts if it's not controlled. And their brains just completely switch off. Maybe if we have parents of children listening, they've noticed that when a child has been sitting in front of the television for a long time, especially if it's YouTube, the child becomes more nervous, aggressive, doesn't want to part with the gadget, becomes kind of uncontrollable, and it really takes time for their mind to slow down and calm itself. That is when the child returns to their normal state, they become curious and inquisitive again and start exploring the world around them. And I also notice those children who get access to gadgets very early just can't keep themselves entertained. So a problem arises where the brain develops in a completely different way. They are constantly waiting for someone to entertain them, to occupy them with something, to show them something, right? To offer them some kind of activities. And they struggle themselves to come up with what to do, how to occupy themselves. Back in my childhood, right? There was no television, or it was just Swan Lake Ballet on television all day and nothing else to watch, and the bedtime story before sleep. We would go outside and come up with things like playing store or building something. Now, for kids, that's a punishment. Want to punish a child? Take away their computer and send them outside. In our me time, in my childhood, if you wanted to punish a child, you'd make them stay home without friends, without going outside, without anything. This just shows how different we are and how these technologies affect our development and the way we perceive information, even causing a generation gap. And the fact is, some people really know how to use it as a tool, while others end up using it to their own detriment. It's like a knife, isn't it? You can use it to cut bread, that's a tool, or you can use it to stab someone, then it becomes a dangerous weapon. It's the same with social networks and any other tool.
Tell me, please, how do social networks, especially in the age of artificial intelligence, affect self-esteem?
They affect self-esteem in different ways. Let's look at a particular situation, shall we? Say some popular girl posts her photos and gets lots of likes and positive feedback. How does that affect her self-esteem? Positively, she feels great, she feels popular and cool, but that's because of external validation, right? But it's not a fact that she feels the same way inside. That raises the question, what is the person like on the inside? Is she stable without this positive feedback, without likes, without comments? Does he feel good, comfortable, or not? On the other hand, if a person posts something or writes something and doesn't get any positive comments at all, what happens to their self-esteem? It could, for example, be completely destroyed and the person no longer wants to express themselves or try anything, or is afraid to start, oh, if I write or say something again, they'll tear me apart. Moving on. So we've come to the point where a person has two kinds of self. One is the external self, how others perceive me. And it depends on the evaluation on how other people see me and what they say. And if they give me positive feedback, I feel great. I'm very happy, satisfied, and joyful about everything. Riding the wave of success, right? But if someone gives a negative comment or doesn't give any validation at all, the person starts to panic. That's it. I'm not important. I'm not needed. What should I do? So there's no stability or assertiveness. There's no understanding or awareness of one's own value without external stimuli, people, or even artificial intelligence. What are many people doing now? They go, chat, look, I had a fight with my friend, who's right, who's wrong? And the chat will tell you, oh, of course, Sveta, you're right. And Katya is just a terrible person. Don't be friends with her. That's it. Break up and don't talk to her anymore. But if you run an experiment and write, no, you misunderstood, I'm actually Katya, it's all the other way around. It will immediately change its tune and say, that's it, Sveta is the bad one and Katya is good. So don't be friends with her. And this kind of fickleness when we don't have an inner sense of self, no understanding, no deep knowledge of who I am, what I represent, then it becomes very easy to control such a person through any technology, not just artificial intelligence. But for people like that, artificial intelligence actually replaces regular intelligence, you see. Because a person simply refuses to think independently and starts constantly turning to artificial intelligence for approval and some kind of positive feedback.
I've been thinking about how there are going to be a lot of deepfakes with news that will distort our perception, and all of this can affect our empathy. What do you think?
Of course. Personally, I believe that empathy and the ability to build interpersonal relationships are things that artificial intelligence simply cannot replace. Because empathy isn't about saying the right words like, oh, I'm so sorry, or I feel for you. So words are only a part of empathy, but the ability to be there for someone, to experience and share their feelings, to withstand another person's emotions, that's what's truly valuable, right? That's why people go to psychologists, to specialists, to learn how to build relationships. And artificial intelligence just isn't capable of creating those kinds of relationships. It's like when you come in and it says, oh, hello, Sveta, or however it writes to me. Hello, Katerina. What would you like to discuss today? Are you feeling down? I can understand and listen to you. But that doesn't give the full picture, does it? What I wrote, or sometimes when I'm writing a scientific article, I just need some new data on a certain topic, right? Recently, I was writing about complicated grief. You are experiencing grief. Are you feeling really bad? I will help you. And it's like, from the perspective of the words, everything sounds great. But first of all, I'm not actually experiencing this grief. I'm writing a scientific article. And secondly, it's completely taken out of context. And as for empathy itself, well, I didn't really feel it. But what I'm thinking about is how it affects someone when they constantly interact with a machine, and don't have any skills at all in building, interacting with other people, forming social connections. By the way, that's something I noticed while I was doing my internship as a school counselor. Kids have a really hard time building relationships. A huge part of my job was actually running group sessions where that's exactly what we did. A friendship group. I taught kids just the simplest things. Like when you're talking to someone, you need to look them in the eye, you need to respond somehow, give some kind of acknowledgement, validation, not interrupt, not jump in with your own, oh, I have a story like that, right? Because this isn't a machine. It's not artificial intelligence. It's a living person. And they also want to be heard. And so I believe that frequent interaction with artificial intelligence and these technologies directly has a negative impact on empathy, because it erodes the ability and skill to build effective communication with a real person, to take into account another person's state, to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to really listen to another person, yes, even just to hear them out.
What do you think happens to a person's thinking when they rely solely on artificial intelligence?
There are already studies on this. It's not just my opinion. Scientists have already conducted many studies on this topic. And just the other day, I was reading in the American Psychological Association journal with actual photos, with CT scans, those images of the brain of a person who uses artificial intelligence and the brain of a person who doesn't. That is a person who doesn't use it to, answer all questions for their professional activities and so on. Such a person has significantly more active areas in their brain. In other words, the person is capable of thinking, reflecting, and processing information independently. And a person who constantly uses it, they experience something like atrophy, you could say, right? It's like a muscle. If you don't train your brain, then the opposite process happens. You lose the essential ability to truly think, to effectively process information, to logically make sound conclusions, and to deeply reflect on what you've carefully read or attentively watched. This was a very interesting experience for me because the study was conducted on teenagers, and the child's brain is very plastic. The brain develops, in general, the human brain develops up to the age of 25. And now imagine when we give tablets to kids starting at 2 years old, and now there are so many different technologies show capable is a person of thinking at all. Here we even come to the next social problem, right? And what if a person lives during some kind of wartime or in a third world country where there is no access to good education or to other types of information like libraries, knowledge, or quality schools? Do children even have any opportunity to develop these skills of critical thinking or just thinking in general in some other way? Do parents communicate with them? What is the parent's level of education? So I believe that there are a lot of factors that influence a person's ability to think, especially during development, right? But even adults, if they constantly use artificial intelligence in a way that doesn't benefit them, a negative trend occurs. There is a degradation of thinking.
There's another point. I often follow investors who gather startups. And they say that now with the help of ChatGPT, you can put together a plan in just 2 months. And this means that the intrinsic value of each idea is being lost. Well, what I mean is that in business, value is already being lost, and it's also being lost in education and in life, because we're cutting down the time spent on thinking, searching, and analysis. But at the same time, the value of life itself is diminishing.
I think that part of this reduction, if you use artificial intelligence correctly, can be beneficial. For example, I could just Google something or go to the library, and that would take me half a day, especially if I live far away from a really good library, right? But this way, I just sit down and, for example, I know that there are all sorts of different artificial intelligences, not just ChatGPT, but, there are ones that will write a presentation for any request you have. Another will make your podcast. Another will do this, that, and the other. And there are some chats that are really great at providing references to new research. Yes, I can just type it in, and it really cuts down the time it takes to search for information, for example. It's important to understand again how we use it, right? And to be aware of the ethical side and your own goals. Why am I looking for this information? Is it so that ChatGPT or artificial intelligence can think for me, or is it so it can help me dig deeper and get the result I'm looking for faster? Because that's exactly where creativity comes in, right? No one can take that component away from you. You can always tell if a person wrote something themselves or if it's that convoluted 3-story construction from ChatGPT, but we absolutely don't talk like that in real life, do we? And very often you can immediately spot it in students' work when they use ChatGPT. I think it's really important to teach this, both children and teenagers and even adults. How do you use it as a tool? What can I do for my project so that the chatbot doesn't write it for me, but instead acts as my assistant?
For many people now, ChatGPT is an assistant, and in general, so is artificial intelligence. And employers are sounding the alarm. What kind of resume can you accept now, and which ones can't you? Because everything is written perfectly. On the one hand, that's good, because you need to present yourself well, but on the other hand, who do you pay money to? Well, that's how it is. I think, by the way, here's an interesting point. So what kind of personality type is formed in people who are constantly on social media, who are always with artificial intelligence? Overall, what do you think?
Well, I think that in general, those people who are very active on social media, who have that need, often have a narcissistic personality type. They like to be in the spotlight. They enjoy external approval and being the center of attention. And this brightness, putting everything out there, impressing others. And the flip side of all this is that these people try to be perfect, to make sure everything is great, right, and better than everyone else. And this is the unhealthy part of a narcissistic personality, when there is no empathy or it is poorly developed, an inability to build long-term relationships, an inability to tolerate the imperfections of others, and an inability to tolerate one's own imperfections. This has a very negative impact, because in the end, the person ends up destroying themselves. These are unhappy people with a lot of fears inside, a lot of shame, a lot of insecurity. And they try to cover all this up with some external attributes, technologies, so that others will tell them how great, wonderful, and professional they are, and so on. But inside, that emptiness still remains, And that's usually when people come to therapy, to a psychologist with this issue. Everything in my life is fine, but inside I feel bad. Career, kids, family, everything is great. Everything is just as the books say a good life should be. But inside it feels so bad that it's just unbearable. And for me as a psychologist, it's also very important that the level of anxiety is still growing. There's a real increase in diagnoses of anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, and borderline personality disorders. They're really flourishing in full force. And I think it would be a really interesting study to see how technology, social media, and artificial intelligence contribute to this. And if they do, then in what way to all these?
I feel like we're about to see mass degradation.
Not very optimistic.
As much as I observe, sometimes there are such basic things, but the person doesn't even want to figure them out, to do them, to spend a minute, 5 minutes of their life to understand. Well, that's how it is. I once read Pelevin's books, how he described the future, where there are dolls and everyone has their own doll for sex, their own avatar, their own programs. And people don't meet until everything happens through these artificial substitutes. I don't remember exactly. I won't make things up, but I recall watching a movie with Robbie Williams where people lie in these big cocoons. They all lie down like regular people, but it's their avatars that go out into the world. These avatars, they walk the streets, they go to work, they do business, and you have no idea who's actually lying in that cocoon. It could be some overweight guy who hasn't showered in weeks, or maybe it's an old lady lying there pretending to be a young woman. And that's truly a profound film. As for Pelevin, yes, I think there are some similarities between them.
Well, this is exactly about what we just talked about, right? Your question about where the avatar is real and reflects the person, and where it's something completely made up, unrelated to the person, totally detached, idealized, and put on display. And you never know what's really behind.
Katya, what advice would we give to our subscribers and viewers who will join this broadcast?
All right, let's do it this way. I believe it's important to learn how to live with technology. My life has seen different technologies, even those old push-button phones and rotary dial phones. And I can say that every technology that has come into my life has made it better, easier, more efficient, and faster. But from a psychological perspective, when it comes to artificial intelligence and social networks, I would recommend that you reflect on how you're currently using them, do a sort of audit, and start using them in a more mindful and beneficial way for yourself. For example, you can use them as a kind of diary, one that gives you instant feedback. You can also use them to see how another person might have felt. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy has many different protocols that are very effective for working with thoughts. If you catch yourself having negative thoughts, you can actually input those negative thoughts. And any chat, whether it's GPT or any other, can help you rephrase them into more neutral or positive ones and help you focus accordingly. So this will be your mini assistant, which by no means can replace a therapist or psychologist, but it can give you some ideas here and now on how to help yourself. And I think that in this sense, it's great and really useful to use it for yourself as an idea for self-reflection. But please don't use it as a substitute for your own mind or as a replacement for the process of reflection. Just take ideas, take information that will help you reflect.
Of course, I'd like to believe in the best, but let's see what happens in 5 years.
Hope for the best, but be prepared for anything.
So, some advice for subscribers and viewers. Please filter what you write in your chats. And not only that, because memory is stored and transmitted to the developers' servers. So it's good when you create something, develop something, bring some benefit to society. But if it harms you or those around you, it's better to think twice. Katerina, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, because it's really important for our viewers to clear their minds. First and foremost, because when using technology, everything needs to be aligned with our psyche and our personal development. You mentioned you would leave us a gift.
I've prepared a gift for you. Sveta will leave a link to this gift below the video. It's a workbook for self-work and self-reflection. Please write by hand. Don't use chats to fill out this work. Actually, I created this for someone who might be going through a period in life when it's necessary to rethink their values, choose a direction, or just put their thoughts in order. Yes. And I think this resource will be useful to you and help you improve your life a little right where you are now. Thank you. That's very interesting. I already want to see this gift. I'm a fan of all sorts of guides and interesting things. Well, I'll leave Katya's information so that each of you can ask her a question. Check the description. The contact details will be under the video. I think many of you have already found answers in this video. And for those who want to talk to Katerina personally, please write and sign up for a consultation. I think you will have plenty to share with her without ChatGPT. We'll learn how to use it responsibly. Thank you, Sveta, for inviting me. And one more thing, since I brought such wonderful guests to you, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment only with positive intentions. Hugs to everyone. I love you all. Alana Lebedinskaya here. And by the way, stay tuned for AI agent reviews next week.